Okay, we're back with our panel, and we're talking about the Me Too conversation that was present throughout the Golden Globes last night. The Me Too movement, every woman showed up wearing black on the red carpet. What'd you make of that? It's pretty impressive, don't you think?
It's a powerful statement, and I think in that unity we see that there's, I think, a real interest in collective action towards ending sexual harassment. I also want to call out that lots of actresses use their platform to bring activists and advocates to talk about some of the core problems that are at stake right now, not just to say something surface level about the issue, but really highlight ways to tackle it.
Was that a Hollywood thing we saw last night? All of those were privileged people, okay? How does this small person here in the DMV and elsewhere relate to that and the issues they're confronted with, in the workplace, on the college campuses and that sort of thing?
Well, I think it almost has to start at the top. I mean, that's the problem. It's not to the exclusion of other people who are waitresses, who are on college campuses and other jobs and positions, but they're not in the position to basically speak out. So it just almost has to start at the top. But you also have to remember, Bruce, that not everyone, and Oprah pointed this out, not everyone in Hollywood always was at the top. That's why Oprah made that point that her mother was a domestic worker. So
Right.
they've been at that level.
Was it me? I'm looking at the camera shots, and I intentionally, because I'm a guy, I'm looking at the men. And I thought some of the men were kind of like on the edge of their seats. What's going to happen here?
And it was interesting that not a lot of men spoke up about the Me Too movement. I mean, that was very interesting, as if it should just be on women to speak out.
Right, lots of people were giving speeches last night, and I think there were some folks who took advantage of the opportunity to lift up the stories and the need for action, and others, I think namely a lot of the male actors who received awards, didn't do as much of that activity.
Is that because they're stepping back, they feel this is the woman's time, or they just don't feel it's their place?
It could be a little of both, and I think maybe that's part of the problem is, it was noticeably absent from the male speeches last night. But this is not just a women's issue only. It's, where are the guys here, where are the men speaking up on behalf of women, and what can we do to fix the situation as well?
Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why I was disappointed that more men did not speak up. It's almost like when it's a race issue, it's almost like African Americans are speaking up, but where are other Americans that are speaking up? So I was really disappointed in the men last night.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the problem is the movement got all this attention last night. You had the hashtags trending, and then today, Oprah was all over the news. No one is talking in my newsroom at the Washington Examiner about anything besides Oprah today. And I think the Me Too movement needs to explain, okay, yeah, we have activists. What do you do from here on out? Like how are men supposed to react? What are they supposed to physically do? How are women, how do we actually go forward from here? Because we're at a watershed moment. But now what?
I think you're absolutely right. You hit it on the head. If we go back to our corners, we've done nothing. We've accomplished nothing here. It's just been a headline, like a lot of television, newspaper, headlines. But what do we do at this point? I mean, somebody has to lay it out. I want to go back to the men, because men own everything. Even with Weinstein and others, now by the side, they still have all the power. And that's why men need to talk about these sort of things and send a message. Don't you agree?
Absolutely. And men need to give more women seats at the table, whether that's the boardroom or the executive suites or the classroom or wherever these decisions are being made. Women have to be there and in equitable representation.
Yeah, I want to be clear too. When I say men own everything, I don't mean men that look like me, okay? Other men. Seth Meyers confronted the topics of sexual harassment in his opening monologue. Take a listen to what he had to say last night.
It's 2018, marijuana is finally allowed and sexual harassment finally isn't. It's gonna be a good year. There's a new era underway, and I can tell because it's been years since a white man was this nervous in Hollywood. By the way, a special hello to hosts of other upcoming award shows who are watching me tonight like the first dog they shot into outer space. For the male nominees in the room tonight, this is the first time in 3 months it won't be terrifying to hear your name read out loud.
He makes my point, like the first dog shot into outer space. I think he nailed it. What do you guys think?
I think he did great. I mean, I was, tense, nervous watching, and I was laughing. And you look around at the men in the audience, and they're just like, oh. So I think he did really well, considering.
Yeah, it's one of those things, you better be there. And if you're not there, they're going to talk about you. You
Right.
better have explanation on why you're not there. You want to sum it up for us? Well, where do we go from here? Is this just, again, is it a movement? We're going to see more women running for office. We're going to see more owners of things calling people in, laying down the rules. And how will it affect relationships? You know, a lot of people meet and date at the workplace, get married, have kids, and that sort of thing. How does it affect male-female relationships in the workplace?
You know, this is huge, Bruce, and we're not going to resolve anything in any one time. And one of the things that was interesting is, in addition to certain segments of not being spoken about, is one of those are those people who are mentally disabled. And NPR did a study on that, reported on that those people are just kind of sort of more likely to be sexually harassed and sexually abused and assaulted, but there's nothing there. So there are all these different segments, and so it's not like there's ever going to be a one-size-fits-all. We aren't going to be able to come up with a one strategy, one law, but I do think it's going to take time. It's almost like the beginning of, and I go back to race, like the civil rights movement. We're not going to have a one fix, but this is the beginning, and I definitely think it's a movement.
Yeah, and we need to make sure also, we're not just talking male-female relationships.
Exactly.
We're talking about all relationships within the newsroom.
I think we also need to move beyond the high-profile incidents as the only thing that we are measuring the success of this movement by. These are systemic issues. They also start early. They start in schools. And so when we talk about putting in place policies and procedures, thinking about bystander training and unconscious bias training, and even the type of prevention work that starts early to reset some of these relationships and norms that are problematic, I think that's going to be the proof that the movement's doing good work and successful in the long run, not just by the number of people who are fired or the number of incidents that we see getting attention on TV.
I've also heard people say that it's about training not just your sons in terms of how to treat girls. It's training your daughters, you know, to make sure you tell people how you expect to be treated. You know, let's stop raising our daughters as though they're princesses, because they're not. You know, it's a tough world.
Oh,
out there.
completely. I mean, it comes as a woman, talking to my colleagues in the media, we're seeing men just in DC and New York losing their jobs because stuff is coming out. And it's not being published in the paper, so you're not reading about it. It's not the big Matt Lauer story. But I think for women and other possible victims, it's important to say this is exactly the kind of thing where you need to know what you're going to accept, what's acceptable, and not just blow it off and say, well, you know, this is going to happen.
Don't give them a pass. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd also say this is about a big picture question of gender equity in our workplaces and our schools. And coming back to some of your points about the norms and stereotypes that are out there, these things all fit together and have led to some of the challenges we're seeing and the behavior that's, I think, permissible right now and that we really need to put an end to.
And that's true, because it's not just about sexual assault, sexual harassment. It's about equal pay for women for doing the same job. I mean, there are just so many issues that are involved and tied up with this one movement.
Yeah, doors open. Don't let them close it. Okay?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, we got this dialogue going. Okay, you guys have been great. Back in a minute.